Good noon, 12 o'clock on the dot. Welcome. I never really know what to say at this point if it's 12 o'clock. Is it morning still or afternoon? It's pretty PM, so it's probably good afternoon. Hello, everybody. If you're here already, thank you for joining us so early. I love the fact you're super keen to listen to Charlie. Me too. I was here 15 minutes early, but that's because we were meeting early. Charlie, thanks for joining us. Welcome.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, perfect. Nice to be exciting. Do you do many podcasts? Did you do it very often?
No, I don't. I did the first one a couple of months ago. You're my second, so I'm trying to say yes to these opportunities rather than run in the opposite direction. But no, I'm not an experienced podcaster at all.
Yeah, nice.
Love listening to them.
Yeah, lovely. Any ones in particular apart from mine, obviously?
Apart from yours, obviously. I'm definitely a high performance podcast fan.
Yes,
and I like Simon Sinek's Bit of Optimism as well. They're my kind of two go-tos.
Yeah, nice. I might have to give that one a listen. High performance podcast, 100%. I went down a rabbit hole last week before last on him, and then I also really like Modern Wisdom from Chris.
Okay, I don't know that one.
Chris Humphries, yeah, it's good. Must be a random topic to start with. But everybody else, if you are here, please say hello. It's always nice to know if we're talking to somebody or where you're from. So yeah, put in the comments. Charlie, you should be able to see that. If you look to the right-hand side, you'll have comments, private chat, I think.
Yeah, I've just clicked over to comments, yeah.
Yeah, lovely. You'll see now questions coming in, hopefully. So if you do have any questions for Charlie, please add them. But also just say hi if you're here listening. The more questions from you guys, the better the podcast will be. So I'll get started. First off, thank you, Charlie, for joining me. I'm really excited to have this conversation around performance and lifestyle for elite athletes. I think for me, it's an incredible job and an opportunity to support some of the greatest athletes in the world, but also gives you a really good understanding of what performance looks like, but also how you support those highest performers. And I think from that, we're going to learn some really interesting insights into how we can support our high performers work. Because I think we may potentially miss some bits in how we do that. I think we look at performance as a consistent go. Whereas I think if you look at athletes, they look at rest and recovery and understanding energy output a little bit more. And so actually we need to do the same for our best professionals in our workplaces as well. And so being able to give people some tips and some tools on how they can do that themselves, or as an organization, how they can do that for their teams as well. So yeah, really excited for this. No, we'll get started. I'm just going to do a quick introduction to myself if anybody's not met me or has not seen what I do before. My name is Rich. I am a high performance coach, leadership development coach and facilitator. I run a company called LP Revolution and Employees Health. The LP Revolution is a leadership development performance company. We work on 3 levels: individual, team, and leadership. Just talking about performance, understanding how we can create high-performing teams and great leaders. Employees Health is what's connected to the Wellbeing chat, and it's a wellbeing company helping people educate themselves around how we look after ourselves and our staff better. Anyway, that's me. There's obviously a lot more of an introduction to who I am. If you want to know more, please just drop me a line. Anyway, I'm out of the way. Charlie, it's now all about you. Please give me an introduction. Tell everybody who you are and what you do.
Thank you. Yeah, so no pressure. I'm Charlie. So I'm a performance lifestyle coach and I work for the UK Sports Institute. I'm full-time and I cover 3 of the winter sports, so skeleton, bobsleigh and snowsports. So athletes that are on the World Class programme, so athletes that are funded through the National Lottery for the World Class programme. So these are the athletes that I work with in my job. I have been I'm going to say PL because that's how we talk about ourselves, PL coach. Been a PL coach for just over 3 years and I kind of gradually moved into this role, coming from a background of physiotherapy, which I have been for just over 20 years, and worked in the NHS and private practice and did do lots of work in sports, although not in the elite sports, but did lots of kind of event stuff in different areas. And within that, lots of mentoring, developing of my peers within that area. But had always struggled with physio. Everybody said, "Oh, that must be a lovely job," but I was inside. I was going, "I'm not very happy doing it. I'm not very happy doing it," but didn't know what else to do. And eventually discovered this world of performance, lifestyle, and coaching. Retrained as an executive coach, so I've got my ILM Level 7 coaching and mentoring certificate, and then transitioned in initially 1 day a week. Now built up to full time in winter sport PL coaching.
Love it. I found, because I have a kind of a similar background to you with my personal training. Physio is very different. I'm going to be very aware of that. But I find it probably leads itself quite well into performance lifestyle, because we do become lifestyle coaches when we're working with our clients as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And when it came to thinking about what I wanted to do that wasn't the physiotherapy, the bit that I had enjoyed of my physiotherapy was for my colleagues and my peers, the kind of supporting them, mentoring them, thinking about their career progression, what was right for them, how they wanted to move through, how to resolve working in different teams, that kind of thing. I'd really enjoyed, and had people could seem to kind of navigate towards me to get that advice. And then with physio clients, when I was working privately, there was a kind of realization that I could be the best hands-on practitioner, I could be the best rehabber and all of this, but actually if there was a whole bunch of stuff going on in the background, then that was the barrier to actually getting some of this stuff started, even happening, working to get the outcomes that, on paper, if I give you these things, do these things for you, it should get us this, but it wasn't. So starting to dig into those conversations, not really appreciating I was doing any kind of coaching, because I guess I wouldn't have used that word at the time to do it. But that active listening, being the space, being the person where they feel they can come and open up. I definitely had that in physio, and it's hugely supported this transition into what I'm doing now. And I kind of bring that life experience with me. So it's not a career change. It's it's career remolding. I guess it's like an evolution. It's not a massive pivot, not so much as a pivot as I maybe thought initially.
Yeah, I see my role as a bit of an evolution from a personal trainer. I kind of, the similar thing, I always kind of see PT stands for personal therapist sometimes as well. And so that I definitely see the coaching and the education around wellbeing, just this evolution of what a personal trainer for me is, and everybody's obviously their own different of kind of evolution around being a personal trainer, and that could just be only in a gym, right? But mine is, that's how I see that career. What I'd like to do, and just for us to start, just to help people understand what performance lifestyle coach is that comparison between a performance lifestyle coach, what you do, and how you help people, to a sports psychologist. So I think they're the two people we see as really helping them. Maybe the lifestyle, maybe this is where I need some education as well, but the lifestyle and support of how people perform well outside of the skill of their sport.
Yeah, no, sure. And depending on where you work in the system, as a PL practitioner coach, you might work very closely with a psychologist. Some sports, they kind of have psychologists coming in for different bits of work, different projects. Some sports have psychologists sitting within the sport, working very closely alongside a PL. So I guess from our side of things, we are coming from a coaching approach to stuff. And we, within our team, we have a huge range of experience that comes to that coaching. So I come from a clinical background, and there are some others, but some people come from business, some people come from education, some were athletes themselves. So there's a whole heap of life experiences that come to that PL role, and bring that frame on life, the view on life to that role. And there are coaching theories that we use to underpin stuff, coaching frameworks that we use to underpin stuff. But I guess from the psychology side of things, they're tending to come sports psychology. Sometimes athletes, connect with clinical psychology as well, but sports psychology, they're tending to come with a performance frame of reference. And it's about a performance question or a performance struggle. And so they coming from that the kind of theoretical application of theory into a framework, actions, that they're using to answer a performance question or an area that the athlete is struggling with in their performance. So we complement each other's work quite well, because in the same way I find in physio, you know, somebody's not going to doesn't necessarily get better from their injury if there's got a whole load of other stuff going on. You know, that shows up with performance things as well. And so when you've got that opportunity with a psychology team, you might work quite closely with them to kind of bring each other's experience, knowledge and expertise and their interactions with the athletes together to help that athlete move forward in whatever way they need to or want to. But yeah, we're kind of there's obviously the qualification route into sports psychology, the kind of registration, that side of things. We in the UK Sports Institute, we have the ILM Level 7 as the kind of qualification in coaching. Sorry, is the kind of qualification that we all either come with or we achieve while we're here, so that we have that level of training for the coaching that we're doing. But how we enter into this role is hugely different for each person, and we come at very different points in our life as well. So we've got some younger members of the team, we've got some older members of the team, some that have been here for 8 years, some that still do other work on elsewhere alongside their PL stuff.
Cool. Okay, so with that in mind, what's the biggest challenges that you're helping with when it comes to the work-life or the life-work balance? And this work for them is the sport, as well as then what the challenges around well-being and then performance are, which you're supporting with.
Yeah. So across the athletes that I work with, the kind of on the World Class Funded Programme, they're funded at different levels depending on where they are in their athlete career, what they've achieved so far, the level that they're competing at. So for some, they are actually still have a work-life balance as alongside their sport, because they still have to have some form of work alongside their sport for financial reasons. But it's the invariable one is that they've only got so much time, as have we all. And there are many things that they need to fit in, and sport is very demanding. It requires a lot of you. It can be all consuming. It has a tendency to have a culture of being all consuming, and that need to be there doing your best all the time and on it, with maybe shutting off everything else so you can do your sport. But at the end of the day, the athletes are still people. They still have all those other things as well. So it's that kind of the balance of it all when they've only got so many hours in the day to fit everything in, and how that impacts on their well-being, their well-being, their mental health, just their, and for some, just their ability to organize all of this, take things on. For some athletes in some sports, they will be coming in at an older age. It's because I'm a talent ID, so they will have had an element of life and managing things in life, managing aspects of life themselves beforehand. Others are coming in quite young, so they haven't necessarily had those life experiences of managing your own, accommodation, your bills, your just getting food in each week and all those kind of things. So it really depends where the athletes are on that journey as to what the biggest challenges is. But if you kind of put them all in, it's that we've got a certain amount of time. We've got stuff that we've really got to focus on for sport, and it's really expected, and we cannot be distracted while we're doing that. But you've still got everything else going on, just the same as anybody else. But how they're expected to output when they're in the sport is high. They're not here to do things at 50-40%. They're here to
there's a few things which I guess come up for me is, as you said, that performance mindset and being able to manage that / optimize it, I guess, as well. And I look forward to seeing how that works for you. But I also hear this player care role in there as well, especially for the younger people, helping them understand how they look after themselves outside of the sport as well. Obviously, I had Ian on a couple of weeks ago, maybe more like a month ago, and it does sound like it's also that. What's that like for the different age groups or people in their different roles? Because I can imagine the younger people, there's a bit more of that. Is it a little bit more of that for other age groups as well?
There can be. So, you know, when you do coaching and mentoring, you kind of go through what is coaching, what is mentoring. And there's, although we refer to ourselves as performance lifestyle coaches, there's definitely mentoring in there. You know, we are using the experience that we have, the life experience. Maybe, you know, I'm older than all of the athletes that I work with. That kind of life experience that I've had, having gone through stages of life. Sometimes it's coming for athletes when they're just going through a stage of life for the first time. You know, first time of living away from home. They've not had to think about how you contact the council about council tax. You know, when money's going to come in and money's going to go out. If you do all of these things on one day, you haven't got any energy left for the rest of the week. But if you keep ignoring all of these things, they won't go away. This, you know, the real world is the real world, and you have to. Parents aren't going to come and scoop it up. You're coming for the independent living life now. Whereas then on the other end, you know, you've got people going through all the way through. You know, you've got relationship breakups. You've got people getting married, having to like move in the country. People's other halves doing other work, having to go away. You know, buying houses. It's like all these things that are part of life. And so I guess we bring that sometimes mental aspect to normalizing some of these things, because when you're in the world of sport, it's definitely a bubble. Okay? Sport is a bubble, and you kind of sit in here and everything is about those extra gains, everything is about being the best, everything is about the winning mindset. And so sometimes their kind of perception of the bit outside the bubble in life can be quite skewed, and you have to normalize that for people, because it's such a disparate side from the sport, in the sporting bubble. You got to normalize some things for them, not you know, push things away, but just sometimes there's a little helping hand in normalizing stuff, because this sport bubble is demanding, but in another way it can be quite protective. There's a lot of people around them.
This is just me being interested. What's the challenge? Because I can imagine there's a challenge for you as well, probably, who is a really helpful human being and maybe has that element of supporting people in there, from giving them those opportunities to perform or to grow in that life area. So you say performance and sport, and as well as that life, as you put them in those two different brackets. How do you balance that? Well, this is life. This is what you need to begin to do, and actually, sometimes that challenge for you there is super important in growth. This is sport, and we want you to make sure that your time and focus and energy is going towards that. Wow, it must be a really hard challenge.
It can be a hard challenge, and I think there's a risk of mopping up too much. So you don't let people fail, because it needs to be right. They need to be progressing. They need to have got it. You know, it's 4 years for an Olympic cycle seems like a long time, but it's not, because there's all these markers throughout it that people have got to keep achieving. So there's a risk that you don't allow people to grow through failure, through getting it wrong, through the trial and error. And there's a risk from our side that you just kind of help them along too much with the life stuff. And really what we need to do is supporting them, working with them to increase their own resourcefulness, their own resilience, their own understanding of that stuff outside of life, so that when they finish in sports, they've got those skills to be able to move through, or they haven't lost them. You know, people, as I said earlier, there's some that come into the sport later on through talent ID, and they've been doing the life bit, and then they come into sport kind of takes over, you know, schedules them all, gives them all the stuff, tells them what they're going to do. There's not the same level of thinking for themselves, and then pop out the other end and they suddenly realize they've kind of lost those skills in life. So it's, and also you have to recognize in yourself when you're working with people, especially if they're dealing with something that's hard, and you can see that they are finding it hard, and they see that, and you'll have this with your coaching work, that you can see that they're finding it hard, and you can see that they're struggling. Being a support, a sounding board, a space for them to work it out with and in, rather than you doing it to them to rescue them, to make everything nice and perfect for them.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting bit, right? Because I see this in my coaching, especially working with managers who are helpful managers. In actual fact, who want to help too quickly and take away from that opportunity of growth and learning. And I love this kind of concept. By helping them, you're not helping them.
Yeah.
And I can see that being a big part. So whilst we're thinking about that transferable skill, how do you help them by not helping them? What's the key part there? What you do as a performance lifestyle coach for these athletes?
So spending the time to get them to think around the situation, you know, whatever it is, getting them to think around the situation, asking those good questions so that they are delving into it, and they're not staying at kind of any surface level assumptions. They're not just sitting in whatever the big emotion connected to it is, which can be quite disabling if you're kind of left stuck there in that big emotion. I love the stuff I do with athletes is helping them to understand the emotions and work through the emotions. And I use the emotion wheel or feelings wheel quite a lot with people, trying to get them to like dig down to what that is, and so they can name it and work with it. But yeah, getting them to explore it, to see even if in that instance, by just vocalizing something or exploring it, they even start to come up with the ideas themselves. They even start to come up with solutions and a way forwards. You know, the most feedback I get is, this space just to talk it through. It's been really helpful.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably the biggest thing we offer. We offer a safe, secure space that we are that just a bit detached from the sport. We have nothing to do with their selection, and so they can come and have those safe, secure conversations and explore those thoughts, explore what's going on. And then you might kind of get them to try and start thinking about options. You know, what are the options that they've got? What can they see? I would sometimes say, you know, they might outright say to me, what would you do? Or they might say, what should I do? Well, I'm not here to tell you. I can offer some ideas, and you can completely throw them back at me. That's up to you. You know, or like the resources, like I can offer you the resources. They're an offer. They're there for you if you want to have a look. They're there for you if you want to explore them. We can explore them together. You can go away with them on your own, work through them. They're an offer. I'm not telling you have to do this. So it's that kind of you're going on the journey with them through whatever the situation is, giving them the feeling of support, that safety to explore it, to delve into areas maybe they haven't wanted to go, they haven't maybe have the words for. Sometimes the support is just offering the word. or a phrase that helps them unlock something else in their understanding of a situation for themselves. Again, maybe an element of normalizing that they're not the only one that will have faced this. There will be other athletes that have had similar challenges, and there might be circumstances where you connect people, depending on what it is. You go, would you be interested in talking to somebody who's also had this difficulty? You go to somebody else, I'm working with an athlete that's got this, would you be open to a discussion about that? And invariably, again, just like people in any other place, that they'll you might be able to connect people, and they start to support each other. It's the not doing it too. It's the doing it with them, the supporting through, highlighting stuff, offering, but really trying to get them to do the thinking and exploring along the way to work through whatever the situation is for them.
Yeah, it sounds like a PL and the role that you do is that really great manager role, or a combination of, like, it's just the understanding that as an employee, is this maybe the best way to put it, as an employee, for you to work at your best, sometimes you just need people around who you can share challenges in a safe space, to talk about things, share ideas, get some insights from, to allow you to process and figure out what the best outcomes or way forward is. Whether that is your manager being that person, whether that's a colleague, whether that's a mentor, whoever it might be, it's about having a place within, or people in the workplace who can support you. And when I work in organizations, obviously I'm a coach, right? And so I will help, and I will be one of those people. But when I'm coaching, I'm always going, who can help you here?
Yeah.
Who else can you lean into? Who can challenge you? Who can support you? Where can you get different advice from? And maybe where can you get a mentor from who's got more experience, who can share ideas and share what they've done, just to give you different ideas and different solutions to problems. I think that's such a valuable thing towards kind of success.
Absolutely. And, when you've got athletes at different stages, it's nice when you can get, would you like one of the more experienced athletes further through the program, getting them to kind of like buddy up, or athletes coming onto the program, who could they talk to, maybe go and try and have a conversation with X in the gym, just to ask for their experience, see how they manage the situation. Again, so connecting people, athletes love to hear from athletes. That's the most powerful.
Yeah.
They love to hear from their own. But outside of that, we have a big PL team across all the Olympic and Paralympic sports, and we come together and we share experiences and we share knowledge, and we go and ask each other questions. WhatsApp groups always thinking, anybody supporting an athlete through this? Anybody knows about this? Anybody got a connection in this, career area? Or, somebody wants to do a course in this. Anybody got any links? So we have that network as well. And then we feed into the sports as well. So if I'm having one-on-one conversations with athletes, but there's themes coming through, particularly around wellbeing, mental health, that kind of thing, then it's my kind of duty to almost take that somewhere in an appropriate manner. It's about being appropriate with it, but just kind of going, like, I'm hearing this stuff. And that's where sometimes it's about uncovering assumptions in places that have been left to fester for a long time, perceptions that have never been challenged, and just trying to get the open conversation. And although I'm a safe space, we have a confidentiality clause around the work that we do, as long as that's keeping the person safe. I will always encourage people to open up as they feel that they can to those around them, because I'm not traveling with them. I'm not off on season with them. They're in an environment with their coaches and their support staff, and there are other athletes around them. And it's really important for the context of the environment that person's going to be working in, that they have people there that can be support, but they also feel that they can share as they want, as they're able to, as they're appropriate. So some of the work I do, like we role model conversations. It's like, I want to have this conversation. Okay, how do you want to have this conversation? What is it that you need to get out of this? What question is it that you need to ask? What do you want to walk away from that conversation feeling better about or knowing more about? And so sometimes we will role model a conversation until they get used to saying something that they need to say. Because again, if it's the first time you've ever had to vocalize it, in the workplace, when you've got to go and ask for those things from HR, you've got to go to manager, something's changed in your life, the circumstances at home change, your role is changing and you're not on board with it, or you were never brought on board with it, but you're told your role is changing. Those difficult conversations that you've got to have, sometimes it's about practicing those so that when it comes out of your mouth at the time that you need it to come out of your mouth, it's not the first. So you've dealt with some of the emotions, you've dealt with some of the feelings attached to it, and you're able to bring that better.
I think you're just selling the importance of having coaching in workplaces.
Yeah, definitely important.
Cheers, you're doing my job for me. Yeah, 100%. And I really like that. I also see there's a value in the athlete-to-athlete conversation, right? And when you were saying, like, building those relationships, I can see for those different levels, and I'd say the levels is just experience levels. Somebody who is 35, my age, who is an elite athlete, has been probably in an elite athlete for 20 years, for the most part, let's say, for example. Being able to encourage that person to go and be a role model doesn't just give that person, the young person, the ability, but also I feel like it gives something to the older person for sharing. It plays to our, and ego is probably the wrong term, but if we feel like we're helping somebody else succeed, it's a nice thing to do. And actually, I think we can also try to translate that into the workplace as well, and the importance of being a mentor, being that support for the younger generation coming through in how to do things really well.
Absolutely. And what's lovely is that a lot of the athletes I work with, and it's, some people are more secure in doing that kind of thing, they're more confident in doing that kind of thing, it comes more naturally. Other athletes are, it's a little bit outside their comfort zone. It's not the side of them they, it's more of a challenge to bring that side of them. Not impossible, but more of a challenge to bring that side of them. But so many of the athletes that I work with, they want to give back. They want to inspire. They go and do talks at schools. They want to inspire the next generation. They want to have a legacy for the sport. Some want to have a legacy for themselves. Don't get me wrong. There are egos in playing sport, but they want to have a legacy for the sport. They want to know that there's another generation coming through. They want to know that what they have worked so hard to achieve so well in, others will be able to do in the future, because it's given them so many opportunities. They've grown as individuals. They've got these life experiences. They've got the characteristics that they've grown and developed through being in the sport, and they want that for other people as well, be it the same sport or other sports. And they also, so many of them recognise as well, they're really privileged to be in this position and to get the support and funding that they do from the National Lottery. Like they don't take that for granted, so they do want to give back. So talking to the athletes coming in and through, but also outside of their own sports bubble, going out into the community, talking to the schools, talking to businesses. Quite a few of them go and talk to businesses. It's that kind of taking the lessons that they've learned and help, passing them on, a feed forward. And also, people love athletes. They respect them, they trust them. So they're actually, it comes with a lot of, power is the wrong word, but it comes with a lot of weight and leverage when athletes deliver this type of stuff. So as much as you can get them to talk to each other, talk to the next generation coming through, to help to feed that information out. It's really important.
Agreed. Look, I don't want to miss this opportunity to talk about the 6 pillars you guys use in your work. I think that'd be for workplace wellbeing. I think it's a really nice transition here as well. If you introduce those 6 pillars and kind of tell us how they combine together to support your athletes, that'd be really useful.
So we have a central ethos of more to me. So the idea being that everybody that we work with is a person first, athlete second, and that there's more to them than just the athlete identity. And there's multiple reasons for that. There's good evidence that those with a really, really strong athlete identity, they struggle with a transition later on. There's more risk of mental health difficulties, particularly with injury. But just trying to keep fostering the person first, athlete second. So that's kind of central. And then we have 6 pillars that we work across, as you mentioned, and that's mental health and well-being, financial health, education. So either continuing education for those that are in statutory or still going through education, or coming back to it if they've kind of missed a bit or they've left it and want to come back to it. For continuing education as well as statutory education. Personal learning and development. So self-growth, and that can be through self-awareness stuff. They're understanding their values, their strengths, their preferences, their communication styles, their personality traits. But also it could be like they're developing skills. They want to learn languages. They want to do their public speaking. So it's that kind of all-encompassing of personal growth and development. And then
I think that combines really well with education. Just to jump in there as well, like education doesn't have to be whilst you're at school. Education can be outside of that. What skill, what other areas of learning, and it also builds towards the identity piece, right?
Yeah. I'm a huge advocate for lifelong learning. Learning, it never stops. We just sometimes pigeonhole it into a certain style of learning, and depending on where you've been with that learning early on in your life and your experiences with that, it can sometimes be a barrier to that continuing lifelong learning. And then, so where was I? So your mental health and well-being, financial health, education, personal development, and then career development. So many of these link in together. So career development for kind of what they're doing through their life, as their career as an athlete, but then also once they decide to come off the world class program, or they come off the world class program, it's not always a personal decision. What's going to happen next? Where they're going to go? What do they want to do? What do they need to explore? And then transitions. And transitions is traditionally thought of as that point when they come off the world class program and retire. Although they might not be retiring, they might just be coming off the funding bit. But it's transitions all the way through. So coming onto it, life things that happen, they move, they get married, they have kids, parents move away, they were living alone, they're in a shared house, all those transitions and injury, all those transitions all the way through. And then towards the end, as they come off the world-class program funding. So those are the 6. And they're they cross over in many, many ways. They're not silos at all. And it would be wrong to consider them as kind of siloed, things that we work on. And the mental health and well-being piece goes across all of them. Whenever I induct a new athlete, I say these are the 6 pillars, and I generally give them some examples of how I've worked with people in those areas, just to show the breadth of the work, that it's not it's not a one size fits all. And then say, but there's a much grey. There's many grey areas between these, and we deal with all of the grey.
And then I think some of those are self-explanatory, right? Financial wealth, continuous learning, which covers 3: career development, education, self-development, right? Kind of continuous learning. The transition one, we could probably have a whole conversation, another whole podcast around that in regards to retirement, and being prepared and ready to make sure that we have something, whether that's going into a work or profession, or whether you are actually retiring. I think there's a whole conversation there, and it'd be interesting to cover that, but we're not going to. The thing I'm interested in is your mental health and well-being support and what it is you do there, because I think those combinations, when I really see a well-being strategy, you're going to mental health and well-being is the main focus, but those other 5 areas you've just mentioned are so important in that. Actually, let's just dive into that mental health and well-being. What is the key things you're doing?
Okay. before I get into that, just to very finish on the transition, I think it's really important that as our role has developed, the support has developed, and athletes now have up to 2 years of our support after they leave the world class program. Just recognizing that not everybody's at the right place when that last funding payment finishes to work on all of these things. So yeah, they have got that 2 years of support.
Before you go into that, I think that's really interesting, because I'm just thinking about the current environment. There is a lot of restructures happening. There's a lot of people now being made redundant, and I think that's also a transition as well, right? From people in the workplace actually being prepared for that. And so let's talk about mental health and then quickly touch on that transition, things you can do. So let's go into that. So mental health. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, the mental health side. Sorry. We're very lucky that within the UKSI we have a mental health team who've got a mental health expert panel. We've got psychologists and psychiatrists working in there that help to shape across our institute how we support with mental health, but also feeding into the sports. And they're there as a sounding board for us. We each sport has a mental health officer that we work with who can be particularly for us, a kind of go to sounding board or go to external for us. Can we chat about this? This is coming up. I want a sense check. Am I thinking the right things? I'm thinking this that we need to support this athlete with, but can I just bring you in? And through that we might then access external support for athletes through counselling, through clinical psychology. So we have that kind of route that we can do. All of our PL team are mental health first aiders. We're all trained as mental health first aiders. So that we have again gone through and developed those skills for supporting people who may be presenting to us in different states, because sport is a tricky old world, and you are there's a perception that you have to be tough and strong and not show anything, and you've got to show up. So people can hold stuff for a long time until it becomes too overwhelming. So things can change very quickly for somebody. But if it's that there's really importance of just building an awareness of mental health and mental illness, that we all have mental health. We almost have, it's a spectrum. To get to destigmatize it, because again, that whole idea of being tough and strong and everything in sport, you want to demystify it, that introduce that idea of the spectrum, that there's a spectrum that you can go up and down it. Our mental health team will say, if somebody comes and they're telling me they're always at that green end, we're also concerned, because that's not normal either. We all move up and down this spectrum of how we feel, how we're interacting with the world, how we're showing up, and just how we feel within us. So it's bringing that awareness to people, it's demystifying it for people, it's bringing a common language for people to use, so they're not feeling clunky and awkward about maybe raising a concern about somebody. If a coach is, or somebody's noticing a difference in somebody, they're not worried about raising it because they're worried about using the wrong language, or just insinuating something they don't want to. So there's a whole education piece around that, and just kind of getting everybody to a point of understanding. Because it's really easy when you've worked in that area and you've got the training yourself to assume everybody knows that as well. But you shouldn't assume. Let's just make sure we're all on the same page. And then with the well-being, ensuring that the well-being isn't just pigeonholed into mental health, and that well-being is this umbrella across your mental health, your physical health, your social and emotional well-being, your spiritual well-being. So all of this is your well-being, and we're not confusing the two and pigeonholing the whole well-being into mental health, which again happens because it's that thing over there and we don't need to worry about it. Or it's too fluffy in sport. Sometimes it can be seen as too fluffy. So and kind of the highlighting the well-being and the impact it has on all of us, because at the end of the day we are all humans trying to do the best that we can. The impact it has on you and your performance, whether that's in the workplace, in the home as a parent, or the dependents that you've got, or in the sporting context, or the support staff supporting those athletes, well-being will impact how we can show up, how we can perform. So just trying to kind of ease that in where maybe it's nice too if we've got time.
Yeah.
And some of the things that I use to bring that to life are things like the stress bucket analogy and taking people through the stress bucket. Help getting them to think about what theirs is, that the idea that your bucket can be great one day, but if you feel vulnerable for some reason, that bucket shrinks, it changes shape, it's smaller. What you could cope with one day, you suddenly can't cope with another day, and you're lost as to why it is. How people are then supporting themselves to ensure the bucket's not overspilling. They're turning taps on of self-care, self-support, so whatever it is that you want to call it, strategies that are good to support their well-being. But really importantly, you can go, oh, this goes into my bucket and I do these 5 things and it empties it. But I think the real depth is in understanding, if there's like various layers of that bucket, how do you know you're moving between them? That's the kind of self-awareness piece. How do you know you're moving between them? How do you know things are building up? What are the signs that you'll see? What are the signs that somebody else would see in you? What do you need to do at different levels? Because all of your strategies won't be the same at each level. You'll have to have different strategies at different levels. And also the context that you got that bucket in, in sport, whether it's a race week and it's at the end of 6 months of being away from home traveling, and that's like the biggest race of the season, versus, the last week of off season where you've had your month off and you've been around friends and family, you've been at home, been on holiday. The context is quite important, particularly coming up to games time. The environment of games is very different. So trying to get people to think about this in their world, what it means for them, how they understand they're moving up and down that stress bucket and the signs. They're really building that self-awareness. And one of the other things I bring is, like how do you tell other people? How do you share that? What might people need to be aware of? And some of the work that sports do as well is like kind of personality profiling, and some will do that through the psychologists here as well. So they've got some awareness of their own personality and how they might show up and share that. But also, building up. But how do they then ask others or give permission to others, or are they okay with others coming and asking? Because this translates to the workplace as well. That you see somebody, they're not themselves, something's not right, can't quite put your finger on it, but something's changed. But can you just go and ask them how are they going to respond? What's going to be? Are they going to think that if you, by asking them, especially I think if you're a line manager, a manager, people kind of go, oh, God, they're coming to say, am I okay? I must be, they're going to think I'm not struggling, I'm not fine. But how do you give people permission to ask you? And how do you want to be asked? Because actually, I think if you have these conversations, it just allows people to look after each other and consider everybody's well-being. And kind of really junior person go and ask a really senior manager, like, are you all right? Or, those kind of levels of hierarchy. Well, we can't talk to anybody at that level, even if we sense they're really, really struggling. So I use things like that to get those conversations going. And like energy plans, what's a good day for you? What's a bad day for you? How do you know? How do you show up? How would I see you? If I was in the room, how would I see you on those days? What are things that zap your energy? What are things that boost your energy? And again, context, environment, time of year, different pressure levels, those things might change. And some of the stuff and that's really important as well. It's not we've done this piece of work once and it's going to sit there in a printout or a document or, shared file, and that's it. We've done it and it's carte blanche, that's it. This is a living, evolving thing, and we need to keep reflecting on this ourselves. We need to keep coming back to this conversation. We need to keep, doing the work ourselves, because life, context, environments, pressures, time of year, projects, deadlines, all of this will impact those areas of well-being. And the more awareness we have ourselves, the more we can articulate it to somebody else, share it, then I think that just helps well-being all round.
It's interesting, isn't it? The well-being piece, and as you're talking, it's understanding that when you're looking after your well-being, and I love all the tools and the strategies that you help people with, and I think it's given lots of advice. But I can imagine a big part of what you're selling here in regards to well-being is if you're looking after your well-being, you're probably going to perform better within your sport. So you're connecting their well-being with their why. And so as professionals, if we're happy, healthy, and we are turning up, showing up as our best, what's the impact of that? So for an athlete, doing that helps them show up and perform better in their sport, right? Yeah. What's the impact of us doing that as a professional? Is it because we're trying to progress in our profession? Is it because if we can do that, we're going to be a better part of a team? Is it if we do that, we're going to be better mum, dad, brother, sister, partner? And actually, that's the driving force behind why we look after our well-being. And so actually connecting the well-being to our whys, I mentioned, is a really important part of what you do, but also a really good transferable skill for us to understand as professionals.
Yeah, and that's I always come back. I work in sport, but I always come back to I'm working with people, you know, and they will become people in the workplace at some point. Yeah. You know, the workplace could still be in sport, but you know, and I talk to staff about this as much, and we talk between staff about this as much. Like, you can't constantly give. You can do it on a short-term basis, but you will start noticing the cracks, and it will impact you, and you will just start to internally lose a bit of you, lose a bit of your motivation, lose a bit of your drive, lose a bit. You cannot do it indefinitely. It's not sustainable. So this, you know, if the staff don't do this for themselves, they can't support the athlete well enough for the athlete then to perform as well. So it's on all of us to think about. But yeah, I think there's also understanding that the kind of flex that when you're, you know, you may be able to show up at work and perform really well, but at home things are really hard. And sometimes with that, you know, people can show up at work because it's almost like a relief from what's going on, or vice versa. They come home and it's a relief from what's going on at work. And there's an element of, you know, are you able to separate those things to help your well-being? But also, what's the risk in separating them of you then pushing really hard on the one that you feel better in, and just kind of pushing the other one further and further and further away? You know, I've hold my hands up, earlier in my career, I would take on more and more and more work because it's an acceptable thing to be working and always be working, rather than, you know, wasn't very happy, like life wasn't brilliant. But if I keep working, people don't accept that I'm at work and I'm just working really hard and I'm career focused. And so at one point in my life, I actually gave up work without anything to go to, because I'm like, I have to not have work as a way out. I have to not have work to run to get away from the other things. So I think it's understanding as well with the work thing, when you might be pushing away from something and overdoing another bit because it's a comfort, and that again, that's not sustainable either, because the distance will become too far between them. So it's that the constant reflection and honest conversation with yourself. The hardest conversations are the conversations we need to have with ourselves, and they're the ones that can be shied away from.
It's you said, self-awareness, isn't it? And also, I was going to add to that, well, if you can get somebody else to have those questions to help you answer those with yourself, then even better, I think.
We're back to the power of coaching.
Exactly, back to the power of coaching. Look, conscious of time, unfortunately we haven't got time to go into those transition bits. What I want to do is, I always do, is just your top 3 tips for people looking to support their performance and their lifestyle at work.
Okay. Have a think about when something's going really, really well, an area of your life that's going really, really well. So look for those golden nuggets. What you're doing in that space. how are you using things to support you in that space? And is there anything that you can take from there into another area of your life that's a bit more of a struggle? So, and this is where self-resourcefulness comes from. We are often doing things without realizing that we can use somewhere else in our life to help ourselves. Find a sounding board, be it a good friend, a coach, somebody at work, family member, voice notes on your phone, just somewhere where you can take it out of your head. So you've got a little bit of separation to start thinking clearly around your well-being, what's impacting you at the moment, what the pressures are for you at the moment, so that you've got a point to work from in building it for yourself. And remember what makes you smile, giggle, have fun. I think in all of this we can just forget to have fun sometimes and be a bit playful, and that you can find the inner child in you, and not to the detriment of others around you, but we can forget sometimes in all of this. So what was it that you loved doing as a kid? Those things that and just have you forgotten about those activities, skills, sports, crafts, music, whatever it was? But just revisit some of those bits, and don't always think you've got to leave things behind.
Love that, Charlie. Thank you so much. I really love that last one. I've added that to the end of my performance program or performance wheel, is just that reminder of enjoyment. What do you do that creates fun in your life? Because we forget about it, and if we aren't having fun, we aren't happy and performing. So thank you for that reminder. Really appreciate your time. Thank you ever so much. And thank you for joining.
A pleasure. Thanks for having me. I've enjoyed it.
If you are here still listening, we have a week's gap, and then we're back with Oliver Deasy, who is next. He's currently playing for the over-35s England team in hockey, but he's also GB in and out player. Really good conversation around him. He works in performance, so it'd be great, nice conversation. So keep an eye out for that, and we'll see you all soon. Charlie, stay where you are quickly. Bye, everyone.
Bye.